Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. This time around, I brought in a special guest, Arekkz. Arekkz, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back again.
Thank you very much for coming back. So when Blizzard announced their BlizzCon Online, well, during BlizzCon Online, they announced a bunch of Diablo stuff. And I noticed on Twitter that you tweeted about it. You're like, oh, Diablo 2, cool. Diablo 4, cool. And I was like, oh, Arekkz is into Diablo. I wasn't aware of that because I'd never seen that content in your channel. So obviously I reached out because, I also don't have a ton of Diablo in my channel, but Diablo is one of those games that I used to play before I got into content creation. Like I always tell this story that I would be a teenager in school and like instead of paying attention to class, I'd be like formulating my next necromancer build and figuring out the skills that I was going to put on it, the stats and all that stuff. But I guess I'd start with you. How did you get started with Diablo?
So it's actually, so my brother got me into it to begin with because it was sort of a lot of my early gaming was definitely sort of, came from him. Like he doesn't play games as much these days. I'm definitely more, the gamer now, but back in the day, a lot of the games that I played, Diablo, he got me into, Hitman, he got me into, Zelda, all those kind of things like that because he just owned the console and stuff. So yeah, back in the day, I used to kind of watch him, well, when I was sort of like a lot younger, I'd watch him play Diablo 1. And then obviously eventually I would kind of like mess around with it a little bit, but I feel like it was, although I dabbled in Diablo 1 bits here and there, most of it kind of came from sort of like Diablo 2, 3 onwards.
It's very much like a similar story because I also started playing 1 and I think I started playing 2 before I finished 1. Then eventually I went back, finished 1, and then continued playing 2. But I think the reason why 2 clicked with me as much as it did was the multiplayer environment. I kind of feel like the stuff that Blizzard was doing for multiplayer back in the day was things that you didn't see a lot of people do. Like they had their own BattleNet infrastructure and all of that stuff. I don't know if you played mostly offline or online. Like, what was your experience there?
For that one for me, a lot of it was offline because definitely like back in the day, when I was playing sort of games like that, like largely speaking, my experience would be like either play games with my brother or just like play games on my own because, really back in the day, unless you were playing something on PC, like online gaming just definitely wasn't as big. Obviously it was present, but wasn't as big. I feel like the only things I used to play online back in the day were like Lost Planet and Jedi Academy and Jedi Knight 2. Those were like my online things. So yeah, so most of my Diablo experience was completely solo.
Wait a minute, Lost Planet? Talking about Lost Planet 2?
I'm talking about Lost Planet 1. I was, okay. You know what? I am a defender of this game. So many people are like, this game is rubbish. I'm like, look, Lost Planet 3. Let's not talk about number 3.
Yeah.
Lost Planet 1 and 2. I kid you not, right? This is something I hold on to because I'm not a hugely competitive person, right? I like to consider myself I'm an average gamer, right? Like I can hold my own, but I'm no esports pro. Like I know my way. I know what to do like Monster Hunter, but even same thing. I'm not a speedrunner. I'm a good hunter. I can tell you how to hunt. I can tell you how to use a weapon. But I'm no like, TDS, kill this monster in 2 seconds. Yeah. When it came to Lost Planet, I at one point in my career was number 400 in the world. And I was like, that's got to be something, right? I mean, my friends will clown on me and say there were only 400 people playing the game. And I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. But I love that game. Like even everything down to I used to pull off trick shots. I would throw the disc grenade and then pull out the sniper and snipe it by someone's head. I was like, I wouldn't even dream of doing that now.
Damn. One of these days we got to talk about Lost Planet, but today I want to rein us back into Diablo for sure. So you told me right before this call that you actually got to play Diablo Immortal because Blizzard is going at it from 3 fronts basically when it comes to Diablo. They're attacking the mobile, they're attacking the nostalgia now with their new announcement, which we're gonna get into. And they're also bringing like a new game, which is going to be Diablo 4. So let's start with Immortal because I'll tell you right now, I'm not interested in Immortal at all because even games that I know that I like on mobile, like for instance Monster Hunter Stories, I know that I love Monster Hunter Stories. I can't play it on mobile because of the touch screen. I can't play on touch. It's just I can't do it. Like I don't know, even just like something simple as Stories, I would like continuously walk past like things that I was trying to grab. So like I know that Immortal is not going to be for me at all, but you said that you were actually enjoying it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had a chance to play the alpha for it, and like honestly, I was really surprised because I know that a lot of people when it was first announced, I think really the hate for it was more so the way it was announced.
Yeah.
Because obviously at the time, and we can kind of touch on that after. But like in terms of playing it, like 100% I agree that like I would much rather play it They don't do this right now, but I'm wondering whether they might later. I would much rather play it with a control pad synced up, and a lot of mobile games are doing that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't give you that option at some point, especially considering like they've done it with things like Switch and stuff. So obviously it works on a control pad, so it should be relatively easy to do. But honestly, it actually worked quite well. I mean, I was playing this on the new iPhone, which obviously is a taller, longer device, so it felt like I had more screen real estate. But honestly, I was just really impressed with just sort of how well it worked, because I did think to myself, is it going to be like a simplified, like rubbish experience and stuff? And yeah, sure, you don't have the full tray of things you had before, but it actually works quite well. So obviously, bottom left, you have your analog stick for movement. That is obviously one of my gripes. I completely agree with you, because it controls easy enough, and I felt like it was precise enough, but gradually as you play, your thumb starts to move up and up the screen, and then you're like, oh, I need to go back down again. But then in the bottom corner, you've got like your main button, which you just do for your repeated like spam attacks, and then you've got 4 different specials which you can kind of swap out depending on what you want. So it actually works pretty well. And in terms of just like the like play for it, it looks cool. Like it definitely looks, obviously like much more akin.
It looks like Diablo 3, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and then you've got the alpha only had I think 3 classes, so I played as like the Barbarian. But ran through some of the dungeons. They were super cool. There are like one of the kind of gripes from people is there are some microtransactions. Honestly, I don't actually know exactly what they are, because I played it completely without them. Like the one thing that was quite interesting to me is that they weren't, at least where I got to in the game. I got to about level 50, which was quite far in the beta. That was almost as far as you could go. And at no point was it thrust in my face. You have the normal thing where you log in. It's like, hey, get your daily login bonus.
Yeah.
And you can obviously see there is like with the battle pass, there will be a paid track as well as the free track. But there was never a kind of a thing where it was like thrust in my face, like, oh, you can't do another dungeon because you've got to buy some gems. Like everything, I just played it completely oblivious to any microtransactions there are there. Having delved a little bit deeper, it does seem like there are some things when it comes to like re-rolling gear and stuff. There's like a limit on how many times you can do it, and then you can buy some. So it's a bit, I don't really know how that's gonna work out. But honestly, given that I played it and I was able to play it and just enjoy it completely devoid of that, I was pretty impressed.
I think it's going to be one of those things. Like I talked about this in live streams. It looks like if you're someone that is just going to play it for, completely casual, like I think you'll be okay. The problem is if you want to get to like, climb ladders and actually do high level rifts and stuff like that, then you're going to have to start shelling out, because, you could see on the battle pass, you had like there were these, this special currency that would allow you to do better rifts and get better scores from rifts and stuff like that. So it is, in that sense, it is a little bit pay to win, but how much they're going to balance that up and down, I don't know, because ultimately I'm not the target audience. I just figured since we're talking about Diablo, might as well throw in Immortal in there as well. But so you actually enjoyed the moment-to-moment gameplay of that.
That bit was really fun. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I think the way, not to say you can't enjoy it more than that, but the way that I consumed Immortal was definitely more from a casual point of view. I would log on every day, I would run through bits of the story, but mainly the reason I did that as well is because like I don't feel like the handheld mobile game experience was super comfortable for long periods of time, so I wouldn't have played it for the whole day. So for me, it worked quite well. I jump on, I do a couple of dungeons, run a few rifts, or do things like that for about an hour, and then I'm like, I'm done. And then each day you get your notification where it's like, hey, don't forget to defeat some demons today, and I'm like, all right, cool. So it was definitely a pretty nice kind of just like in your pocket Diablo experience, pretty casual, and just keep it moving.
So One very important question I have going into this is like, which one are you more hyped for of the two things that were discussed on Friday? The Diablo 2 remaster or Diablo 4?
For me, definitely Diablo 4, because although Diablo 2 is where it's like kind of really started for me, and I do have those memories, and obviously I went back and like rewatched the trailers and stuff, and it looks fantastic the way they have remastered it. But it's interesting because I was watching back and I was like, I know I'm still going to play it, I know I'm still going to love it. I never go into Diablo for like the graphics or anything like that. But obviously the remaster, it is a remaster and not a complete remake re-envisioning. So it is still, you look at the two side by side and you're just like, it still looks quite janky, in a kind of good way, right? So I'm definitely more excited for just the future of the series, but Diablo 2 will be great.
Yeah, so an interesting little factoid, I'm not sure if you were aware, but like every time that news would come of like a leak that Blizzard was working on a new Diablo 2, because there's been a lot of reports on that stuff, Usually one of the articles that people would go back to is like this news article that was posted a while ago where some of the developers said that basically a lot of the game's source code was corrupted. They lost they lost the backup of it, and then eventually they kind of pieced it back together from code that the developers would take home to work on and stuff. So they would kind of develop, hey, bring those files over that you took home, and they were able to like pull it back together to actually put it out. So it was kind of like a little bit bumpy there, but that was one of the reasons why a lot of people would always say, oh, they can't remaster it because they don't have the source code. And one of the things that was revealed in an interview from the guys that are working on it is that apparently there was this senior designer at Blizzard that was running around everybody's desks like trying to pick up leftovers of Diablo code.
Really?
For them to just like remake the base game so that they would have everything working in the background to then build the new stuff on top of it. I was just like, dude, what the hell kind of...
That's actually amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently the loss wasn't that bad. They were able to get some of the art assets back and all of that stuff. And like we were discussing, essentially the remastered visuals that they're working on, which is going to be like full 3D, 60 FPS, all that stuff is actually running on top of the old engine.
Right. That explains it a lot because obviously because it were a remaster or like a re-envisioning. Then obviously I would have seen them more so build it in the style of like Diablo 3 or something like that. So it definitely has that, and I mean there's nothing wrong with that because obviously if people have got those same kind of thing as when like WoW Classic came out, people wanted to go back because they wanted that taste of the old experience. So I think a lot of people will love the fact that they go back and they're actually like playing something that probably feels and moves quite a lot like Diablo 2, just with like a polish of paint kind of thing. So it's definitely cool. It's definitely really, really cool, but it's just really hard because and again, this isn't even from a graphics point of view, but it's just like, you look at, say, like, the video they put out for the Rogue in Diablo 4, running, like, super smooth, everything jumping around, flipping around, and then you switch over to the Diablo 2 thing, you're like, yeah, it just looks kind of, it is dated. And I mean, and it makes sense, that's not rocket science, right? But...
Yeah, but I'm still so happy that they did it like that, though, right? To actually give you the authentic feel of the old game. This is something that they did for the remake of Demon Souls as well. I'm not sure if you were, because I know that you've played Demon Souls recently as well, right? So the animations that you have for things like backstabs and parries and things like that, they're actually different from the animations of the original.
Right. Okay.
But what they did was they made sure that the timing of the frames was the exact same. So even though the animations are different, the timing for you to do a parry in the remake of Demon Souls is the exact same timing as for you to do a parry on the PS3 version. And that is one of the things that Vicarious Visions is doing here, which is even though the game is running on 60 FPS, the original game is running underneath the hood at 25 FPS, and the timing of every single action is timed to be the same as it was in the old game, which I'm just like, that has got to be such a crazy development wizardry that they're doing to pull that kind of stuff off. But it makes me feel a little bit better about the team that is working on this, because the guys behind this are Vicarious Visions. They did Tony Hawk remasters, the 1 and 2. Did you play those? Because I didn't. I don't tend to play Tony Hawk that much.
No, the only time I ever played Tony Hawk was like back on the N64 days, like when it was like originally out. But everyone was kind of getting a hype. But I'm just like I never went through like the skater phase, so I didn't really have that connection. So I was like, it's cool, but no.
Yeah, but a lot of people were saying that those are like really good, and also they did the Insane trilogy for Crash Bandicoot.
Oh,
so they do have something when it comes to doing some of these remakes, and. Because I know that a lot of people's concerns is like, Warcraft 3 Reforged and how that completely, like, they screwed it up. They messed up that game entirely.
I heard, I don't know the details, but I heard, like, it wasn't received very well. I didn't actually know the ins and outs.
So there's a lot of people that are concerned about that, but that particular team was actually, like, dismantled and reabsorbed into other teams inside of Blizzard. And the guys that are doing this, Vicarious Vision, completely different. And it makes me feel a little bit more at ease, the fact that they went to all the trouble to build the game, the old game, beneath the hood of this one and have all of this FPS syncing and all of that stuff to make sure that the game feels exactly like that.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I think if they didn't do that, then it's almost like what is the point? Because if it's just like, let's just give you like the world and story of Diablo 2 but in like Diablo 3 engine, it's like, well, you're making Diablo 4 anyway, so it's like you're basically making a lesser version of a game. So at least if you're going to do that, you've got to throw back to something that holds true to the original.
So I got to ask you, out of the classical game, what was your favorite class?
So it's interesting because like back in the day when I played Diablo, this was pre-Jim Arekkz. So back in the day, I wasn't even like the big. I wasn't even looking to play as the big guy. So it's funny because it's one of the few times that I would always play Necromancer.
Oh my god!
We're the same, you and I. We're the same, yeah. But the thing, it's funny because in most games, almost any game, I don't play casters, I don't play anything like that because I'm just like, look, right, I'm not a magic guy. I don't sit at the back of the pack and fire a stinking fireball. I run headlong into battle. And I wanna fight things. So I'll either play things like rogues or I'll play. Well, I went through my phase of like I'll always play like a rogue or a ninja or that kind of class.
Yeah.
And then obviously much more now. I'm just like I want to play the beefy tank. I just want to be able to go there and just not die. So I'll always be Barbarian. But yeah, Necromancer in Diablo and Guild Wars are the only games where I played casters like that.
It's funny because on Diablo 2, the very first class I played was the Necromancer as well. I was like, oh, I want to be able to summon skeletons and have like an army of my own. And just like back then you could have a ridiculous number of skeletons, but by the time you'd get to like Act 4, they were completely and utterly useless. Because if you go to Diablo with 20 skeletons, he like throws one lightning at them and they're all gone. So it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay. That's great. But it's funny that both of us ended up going with the Necro. So did you play the Necro a lot on Diablo 3 when they released the Necro?
Yeah. Because obviously when I first played it, I played Monk, and then when it came out and I went back and replayed through, I loved it so much because that same kind of thing. There were so many ways you could just summon undead. Like I can't remember all the move permutations, but I just remember like all the time I just had the screen. Like basically my metric was if the frames aren't dropping, I haven't summoned enough undead.
That's a good way to look at it, though. That was so much fun. I just loved the whole Minion Mancer aspect of it. Even if, though, in Diablo 2, the thing was more about the raised dead skill instead of just skeletons by the time you reach the end, but it was still so good. Like, did you also do the thing with that combo that we used to make with the Blood Golem and Iron Maiden, and because it would give you like infinite life or something like that in the initial?
I don't think I remember that one too much. I'm still. It's funny because it's been such a long time since I played like the specifically. Like all the kind of specifics are quite hazy, but I definitely remember some of them being some pretty lethal combos though.
Yeah. It was friggin' insane. So you played the expansion as well, or just classic Diablo 2? You played Lord of Destruction?
You know what? I don't even. This is the thing. When games go back this far,
yeah.
It all blows into one.
Hard.
I've played. Like I've played everything that I know of it, but I don't know whether my memory is of like the expansion or whether it's just because back then it all merged into one.
Yeah.
I played a lot of it though.
Yeah, I believe you. But so, which platform would you rather play it on? This thing is coming on PC, PS5, Xbox, and Switch. And in my opinion, Diablo 3 was actually better on consoles. Like, I know that a lot of people are going to be upset at that because, Diablo's a PC game, you got to play it. It's like, I played a ton on PC, and then I played a ton on console. I'm like, I like the consoles more. I think it's more fun. So
No, I completely agree. I did the same. Like, I played Diablo 3 from, like, the second it was out. Obviously played Diablo 2 on PC. But no, I love the way it is on the console. It just feels like it just works really well. Like, it's interesting because some of those games I'd always be like, surely it won't work on console because I need my numpad. I need that same kind of thing for like when you look at people playing Final Fantasy 14. I'm like, you can't play that on controller, and you see people doing just fine for it. But yeah, I 100% console. I'm playing Switch. I need to be able to play on Switch. It needs to be because Switch was great for Diablo 3, and like now. Yeah, and also because this one, you're not playing it for the visuals, you're just playing it for like the retro experience. I almost want to play it handheld.
Yep. I completely agree because I think it's even going to look freaking fantastic when it comes on, when it's on the Switch screen, because it always seems to look better when you're on handheld versus when it's on the TV. But it's still good to have the option either way. But yeah, I agree. I think Switch is the one that I really want to play it on. The thing is, I'm like 90% sure that I have a bunch of friends that are going to want to play it like on PlayStation. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have to like buy both or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it has got cross progression, right? So
that's the weird thing. How are they going to do cross progression and not do cross play? It's so weird.
That's a good point, actually. That is quite weird. I wonder whether it's I guess it's because the one running theme with cross play all the time is Sony ends up always being the blocker. They're just like, we don't want it. I think the reason they do it is because obviously they're a lot of the time they're like the leading platform on the console space. So they're just like, well, if we do it, people don't have to come to our console. So I feel like they're often, at least from what I've heard, like from people, they tend to be the blocker. So, but at least with cross progression, you could still be like, all right, my buddies are on PS4, I can jump over.
But although it's only cross progression if you are in the BattleNet system. So like offline characters, you can't actually cross progress. You have to have like a BattleNet character, otherwise no good. But yeah, it's like, I don't know if it's Sony simply because we have Outriders coming out soon, and Outriders has crossplay on everything. So like, I don't know if Sony's still like doing the whole thing of like, no, it's all ours, but it could be. I just don't know at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
So I wanted to move us over to Diablo 4 then, because I know that's the one that you're more hyped for now. So
yeah.
One thing that was announced was character customization, which, in a way it's kind of weird because you look at those characters, they're so tiny on your screen, but you can really zoom into them, and so you'll be able to fully customize them, which is something that you couldn't really do up until this point in any Diablo game. Is this like a big feature of Lost Ark? Because I know that you've played Lost Ark. I haven't played Lost Ark.
No, so Lost Ark, Lost Ark does have some, creation. You've got, like, the classes are gender locked though, much like they kind of although they are starting to release that now, they're starting to kind of do some more equivalent classes. But within that, there's a fair amount of customization. But again, you don't see a lot of that stuff because as soon as you go into it, you kind of do that. I guess one of the other things they kind of throw into is because Diablo Immortal had a degree of character customization, nothing huge. But like, for example, when you had the Barbarian, it's like, here's 2 different faces, here's like 3 different hairstyles and a couple of different bodies and stuff. So it was pretty basic. But yeah, Lost Ark definitely had in fact, it's weird. I think a lot of the Korean MMOs just do that. They give you like a lot of options, but then you're just like, I think the reason they do it in that is because there are some cutscenes in Lost Ark as well. So maybe there's.
I'm hoping they'll do some cutscenes that they include your character in for Diablo 4. I think that would be pretty cool. But character customization, they're trying to sell that as like a really big feature. I'm just wondering how much they're going to put like in terms of microtransactions and that stuff. Like, hey, here's this special tattoo, here's this special haircut and all this stuff. And ultimately it doesn't even matter that much because you look at your character.
The second you start and you put a helmet on.
Yeah, everything's gone. Like half of the time you spent creating a character's face is just like gone forever in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, it's funny because it's interesting because I love character creation in like any game, but it is true exactly like that. It's even like I kind of harken it back to like Monster Hunter, even like the older games or even the newer ones. Like okay, you can hide your helmet, but generally speaking, as soon as you made your character, it's like helmet on, armor on. Oh well.
And then you and me have to find the few helmets that have like beards so that we can let our character's beard flow free.
Exactly.
If it doesn't allow beard, we gotta hide it. It's that simple. It is what it is.
100%.
They also announced mount customization, which again just makes me wonder. You're gonna put microtransactions because even here they have like the traditional horse armor, which was one of the original microtransactions. They started with like some Elder Scrolls game. Was it Oblivion, Morrowind? I forget. It was one of those. Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it was, but I definitely remember like the joke about like paying for like horse armor.
So what do you think about customizing your mount? It reminds me a little bit of Witcher 3, how you'd be able to like have trophies and stuff that you would put on the mount when you're running around.
I think this has a bit more value to it because I think one of them wasn't there like a spectral looking sort of bone horse as well.
Yes.
So I think this one makes sense because whereas your character face and your character like tattoos you basically won't see at all, but of course the mount, it is. They're definitely making it a bigger part of Diablo 4. You run in your mount, you do like mount attacks, you can leap off of them and stuff. And given that, by the looks of it, you'll be using it a lot of the time to traverse the world, I think that makes a lot more sense. You will see it. So if they can kind of do some fun things, like again, I mean that is probably where they're going to be able to like sneak things in. But as long as there's some good ones in the game, like it'd be cool if they did, I don't know, boss specific mounts as well. That would be cool.
It's like, I think the balance to be stricken here, because I know that a lot of us are going to be very averse to microtransactions when it comes to Blizzard at this point, because Blizzard's kind of messed up on a lot of things. But like, I think if you can strike a balance of like the amount of budget you put towards things that you can get in game versus the amount of budget you put towards microtransactions, things that you have to buy. So like, don't always be that game that the best stuff is always on the store, and then you can get like some cheap looking things in the game. Right.
That is always the worst. Where they're like, yeah, you know, you can get some stuff from a boss, and it's just like, this is just like a brown saddle, but you're selling me like a rocket booster for my horse on the shop. Like, come on, man. Like, no, I definitely agree. It needs to be like pinnacle stuff, but then there's like some extra stuff, or like you know where I don't mind it, and it's like, you know, even this is ultimately better in game, but where I don't mind it so much is when they just do like seasonal stuff on the shop. It's like, hey, it's Christmas, you want to buy a Santa's mount? I'm like, all right, cool, you know, fair enough.
Yeah.
But just give me all the best stuff in game, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. So with this mount stuff, because I hadn't been keeping up with the Diablo 4 development all that much. I really started getting more into it with the news of Diablo 2, which I kind of feel like Diablo 2 Resurrected is almost a Trojan horse to get people in. Hey, remember this game that you really used to like?
True,
like we're working on that one, but we're also making this new one, because it definitely kind of worked for me. I was like, okay, so let me see what they're doing for Diablo 4 now. And it seems that Diablo 4 is going to have much more of a shared open world experience than any Diablo has had before. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's almost like a lot of the stuff they're doing, they're just trialing in Immortal, because Immortal has a very similar thing. Even though it's just mobile, you walk around the world and there's just like other randoms that are just out there doing stuff as well. So it is much more akin to an MMO. I don't mind that. I quite like that a lot, because that's also much like it is in Lost Ark as well. I kind of just feel like Blizzard have just like looked at Lost Ark and been like, how do we make Diablo 4 like Lost Ark? Let's get it out beforehand. They're not going to beat him to the punch. Like, whichever one comes out first. I'm just telling you, if you even if you're Diablo, if you launch after Lost Ark, it's going to be tough, right? That's all I'm saying. But I think the online thing works quite well, especially if they do it really cool in the world. Because one thing that Lost Ark did, and I get the impression they might do it in Diablo as well, is you have like world bosses, right? And then suddenly, before you know it, you're going around with your homies, but then before you know it, there's like 30 people on screen farming this boss with like 20 health bars. And it's like, yo, this is awesome.
Interesting. So that is how it's working on Diablo Immortal, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the player count is. I'm not sure whether it's like a limited bubble thing, but like basically whenever I was playing around, like I played it completely solo, and obviously you can party up, but then when I'm walking around the world, everyone's out doing their own thing as well, and I'll just like see people run along. They can help you out. Like if they've got their own particular instance mission, you might see them fighting something that's just like not there for you, but generally speaking, you'll be sharing the world, running around. You run into towns and you see like 10 different people or like 20 different people queuing up outside like the Rift and stuff. So I honestly quite like it, because even if people aren't that fussed about being like always online, I just like how kind of alive it makes the world feel. Like if you walk into a town, you just see players doing their own thing. I've always liked that.
I actually think that the model that they're going for with 4, you were saying Lost Ark, but to me it feels a little bit more like, then again, I never played Lost Ark, but it feels very similar to The Division, which I'm pretty sure you played Division with all the looters that you tend to play.
Yep, definitely.
So like they talked about camps, and the idea of camps is like these towns that there's demons that overran them, or some curse was placed upon the people that were in the town. And it seems like you either go in there, you fight a horde of demons, or you do some kind of a quest, and eventually those things transform into hubs, right? That kind of reminds me of the stuff that we had in Division, where usually before you would get a hub, you would go in there, you would fight maybe some enemies or something like that, or you would have to do some quests to get the hub online, and then boom, here's a hub, here's a bunch of quests, here's stuff where you can refuel and whatnot. That's one of the aspects that I definitely feel there's a ton of Division inspiration. So how would you feel about a Diablo game? Like, imagine Division, but like as Diablo. All of the systems that Division has, but as Diablo. Like, how would you feel about that?
I mean, I think I'd be... There's elements of the Division that are really cool. I definitely feel like you merge both. I feel like Division struggles on the loot front, but like Diablo is always like king on that front. But in terms of the base thing, that's actually a really good comparison, because yeah, that honestly that worked quite well. I mean, again with Division, I think a lot of people were like, oh, it would have been nice to have had the whole open world. Division 1 definitely did it really well, where obviously you had the dark zone where like you would go in, and then obviously you had the hubs. Division 2 kind of messed it up a little bit, but I still personally prefer like just completely open maps, just sort of seeing people everywhere. But I do think there's scope to do that. I mean, if they did have like a Diablo Dark Zone where you go and you just like duel other players, it's like a Dark Rift or something, that would be pretty badass.
So you haven't watched their videos, have you?
I haven't seen the latest stuff. I've seen the road trip. Has there been? Have they?
Because there's literally a dark zone in Diablo.
What? Yeah. See, you know what? Right. Here's the thing about Diablo 4. So when they first announced it, I was like, "Yo, this is awesome." But you know what I've noticed they've been doing? Because I caught up on it like a little while ago, but obviously I haven't seen the latest stuff. They've been doing a lot of updates just on like a developer blog where they don't seem to basically promote it in the same way they do everything else. And it's been like there's been a lot of stuff they haven't talked about. Because I saw a load of like skill information. I was like, why is this not in a trailer?
Yeah.
But yeah, so wait, there's a dark zone?
Yeah, there's a dark zone there. They're called Fields of Hatred. And it's like, this is the reason why I brought up the Division comparison, was specifically because of this. Is because there's these things called Fields of Hatred. The justification is that when players enter there, they get corrupted by Mephisto's hatred. And so they start they start getting mad, and you can choose to do PvP and engage with other players. I think you can also get these special shards by killing monsters, because there's also monsters in those zones, right? Just like you would also kill enemies in a dark zone. And essentially, you go in there, you kill other players, and you get these shards, which I forget what the name. I think they're called Shards of Hatred. And then you have to purify the shards in order to actually get them. And imagine what happens when you purify the shards.
Does a helicopter come in?
It might as well, because it notifies every player around that specific area, and then they can come, and if they get you before you purify your shards, they can steal your shards. So it's basically like gank bait, just like the Division.
That's cool, because honestly, that is I like that, because it's funny, right? Because I play a ton of Division 1, obviously a ton of Division 2. I was one of the people that loved the Dark Zone. Like, I used to live in the Dark Zone. Me and my friends used to run around, going like full-scale manhunt, just like holding off on buildings. I loved all that stuff. Like, we would terrorize people. It was brilliant. I know a lot of people were quite divided on it, because they were like, oh, I don't want to have to do this stuff, and like, because they put a lot of the best stuff in there. But honestly, I feel like that system works so well in something like Diablo, because, I've always felt, I know Diablo's had like, some PvP options and stuff, but I've always felt like it's just a bit, I don't know, it's never been like a prevalent thing, whereas like having a forced area to kind of give you that'd be really cool.
Yeah, so like Diablo 3, they didn't even have a PvP mode at the start. I'm pretty sure they only added like as an afterthought later. In Diablo 2, I was actually really into PvP, despite the fact that it was kind of unbalanced. Like, to give you an idea, I made this build one time that was completely and utterly broken. There was this stat, which I think they eventually nerfed, but it was hit slows target, or slows target on hit, something like that. But the thing about this stat was that there wasn't a cap on it. So basically, I grabbed every single item that had that stat, and then I put a paladin on it, and the paladin has the holy freeze aura that freezes everything around you, and so it also stacks with that. So like, I could run up to someone, smack him once with my shield, and they'd just be like, super like,
no way.
They could barely move. It was hilarious because it didn't. I almost didn't deal any damage, but I didn't have to. I could slowly kill them because they couldn't leave. And they couldn't attack me.
That is incredible.
So there were a lot of really crazy stuff that you could do in Diablo 2. In Diablo 3, I felt like PvP was just completely afterthought. It didn't matter. But for 4, it definitely seems like they're bringing it back with this Fields of Hatred stuff that is just completely and utterly insane.
That sounds cool. I can't believe I definitely need to do like a Diablo 4 catch up, because like I said, that is one of the things that I noticed for a little while. Like I think it was a few months back, I just stumbled on like a big blog post where they just did like a skill blowout, where apparently they were like chatting with players and kind of getting some back and forth on how the progression works. And I was just like, why have I not seen this stuff? Like, why has it not been like put in my face and been like, yo, you should check this out? But I guess they're kind of, it sounds like they're taking quite a lot of feedback on. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't. Maybe now they'll start the marketing train. Now they're starting to kind of like push it a lot more.
I get the exact same feeling, which is like, I just feel there hasn't been that much marketing around Diablo 4, because I'm someone that, even though I'm jaded by some of the stuff that Blizzard has done, Diablo is still something that is I always have those memories from back in the day, and it's nostalgia, and Blizzard is getting me with nostalgia for sure, because the main reason I started looking into this stuff is because of Diablo 2. But I still, at the same time, I feel like there's not that much being talked about Diablo 4 up until BlizzConline, because I was like, it looks like the world is going to be like actually really huge. They're saying stuff like the rogue is going to have class-specific quests throughout different areas of the world in order for you to get your different specializations for the rogue. And I was just like, It's got to be huge game for you to have quests all over the place with the rogue.
Yeah.
And you have this open world. The open world, I even think it's not actually going to be, you know how the entire game is usually randomized, procedurally generated and all that?
Yeah.
The open world, I don't think is going to be procedurally generated. It's going to be dungeons that you go from the open world into. Those are going to be procedurally generated.
Right, okay.
So you're going to have the camps that we were talking about earlier out in this open world, and you're going to be able to progress through them as you play through the game, I would assume. And you're going to be able to create those hubs for yourself there. And you will be meeting, I'm assuming, players alongside the same level of progression that you are at right now in the open world, kind of like you would run into people in the Division, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get, because I get that, and that makes sense. I mean, they must be going for scale because that's why they're going to put in mounts. Because you've never really. I mean, not to say it wouldn't have been useful, but you never really need a mount to get around Diablo. It doesn't take you very long, or you just teleport, right? So they must be trying to do that big. It's definitely kind of like that hybrid sort of. It's not a full MMO in that respect, but it's kind of they're going for that sort of hybrid world sort of shared experience thing.
Yeah, which made me wonder, like, that appeals to you even more because you've been doing Destiny, Division, all of these, like, shared open world games. So that seems like it's going to be right up your alley, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I just love that stuff because I think back in the day, even before like the looters, like I don't have as much time to play them these days, but I just love MMOs anyway. Just like going online and just seeing people, even if you just don't interact with them, just seeing people just go about and do their business. Like even in WoW, like when I used to just go and do farming runs and just mine stuff, like someone's over there fighting something, it was always kind of cool. So yeah, definitely that much. Yeah, and that is also something that was prevalent in Lost Ark, and that's why I had like so much fun with it.
Going back to Lost Ark, I'm not sure if Lost Ark is going to do that great because of the fact that it already released in like the East, right? Because like you look back, for instance, on the examples of Monster Hunter and how it would usually release in Japan first and then here. And by the time it would get here, I always felt like the hype had died down significantly, which is why I only really got into creating content for Monster Hunter when World came out, because that's when I was able to get in on the ground floor running alongside everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there definitely is that element to it. Especially, and this happens a lot with like a lot of Korean games. Like, I think back to Blade and Soul when that game was first announced. I was so incredibly excited. Like, I love martial arts, and like seeing that as an MMO, I was like, this looks fantastic. But by the time I used to follow that religiously, like year in year out, and it got to the point where I was like, this is never coming out. And then when it finally came out in the UK, I didn't even play it. I was like, you know what? Like, it's been 6-8 years, right? So there definitely is that element to it. The only thing that maybe might push it is that I believe they're working. I think the company behind that are working with Amazon. So I think Amazon will be the one pushing this one.
Oh,
and I feel like so I feel like there'll be a lot of push from it. It also depends as well, because the game that the studio made before that was Crossfire, which Xbox are pushing on their platform. So I wonder whether they would do, whether like Microsoft would try and bring it to their platform as well, which could give it more exposure, throw it into something like Game Pass. But I think the real defining factor would be if they dropped it before Diablo, because obviously like a lot of, I'm not saying, diehard Diablo fans are going to be like, Diablo is the best, I'm going to go to it regardless. And obviously a lot of other people play things like Path of Exile, but I do feel like a lot of people, because when I did a brief stint covering Lost Ark when we played the Korean beta.
Yeah, I watched it. That's how I got all of my Lost Ark information. Pretty much.
Amazing. But that's the thing. But people loved it, right? But then, but much like you said, a lot of people were like, I just can't get hyped for it because I don't know when it's coming out, and you leave it too long. So if it has a big marketing campaign, I feel like if people jump into it, they will enjoy it. But yeah, it's hard to say. I don't even care if it does well. I'm going to play it myself. Just release it for me. I'll just sit there in my own world, even if there's no one to help me with the bosses. I just want to play that game, man. That game was so. The thing is, and this is why, like Diablo, and even with the rogue footage, like the Diablo 4 footage looks fantastic. It's obviously improved, progressed every single time, but nothing hits as hard as like Lost Ark when it comes to just like the visceral combat feel.
That was actually the next thing that I was going to ask you, is like between the hype like for Diablo 4 and Lost Ark, you're more hyped for Lost Ark, it seems.
I am, just because this is the thing, right? And bear in mind, Lost Ark, I'm playing this on keyboard and mouse, so there is no rumble. But I feel the attacks. This is the one thing that I've noticed, and this is why a lot of the time, whenever I have these discussions, or whenever I speak about these kind of games, people are like, yo, have you played Path of Exile? I've never played Path of Exile. I can see why people love it. But the one thing that has always pushed me away from it is that when I watch gameplay of people just doing these dungeon runs and they're wiping through things, it looks like they're slicing through paper. It's just like, everything's... I'm just like, And again, I know I'm playing on keyboard and mouse. There's no rumble, so I don't physically feel it. But I don't like it in those kind of games where you have that thing and you just feel like if I'm laying waste to 100 enemies, I want to feel that. And when you play something like Lost Ark, right? And I play Destroyer, the guy with the giant hammer. When you literally pull everything together, launch it in the sky, and slam down, like the earth cracks, everything around it, like it does effects like I've never seen before. And I'm just like, I feel every hit. I'm like, this is what I need.
It's I think that's something that we also have in common, which is impactful animations. Like you can give me a game that the visuals aren't even all that great. Like it might even have like not great visuals, but if it has really good animations and can really convey that sense of impact behind your hits, then I'm much more invested in it than if you give me something where I don't really feel it as much. And I do agree, particularly when you look at endgame builds for Path of Exile, everything just gets melted so fast that I don't even know how you could make the players feel the animations, because everything just gets disappears. Like you press a button, something happens, they explode. And it's fascinating when you look at the builds that people are doing and you look at the crazy skill tree that it's got going, because I have played a decent chunk of Path of Exile, not enough to get into endgame or anything like that, but it does have a lot of potential in terms of build making. But I do feel the same thing that you're talking about, the animations and stuff like that. They don't feel like they convey as much weight behind it. And there's other things in Path of Exile that I'm not too into, like since you've never played it, maybe you don't know, but like you actually slot your skills into your armor.
Oh, okay.
So if you upgrade your armor, you need to make sure that you have an armor piece that has like similar slots to the ones that you had before, because otherwise your build's not going to work anymore, and it's kind of weird. And I know that there's recipes and all kinds of crazy things that you can do with it, but like for someone starting out, it is incredibly daunting to start playing Path of Exile. I found it's pretty friggin' wild. But steering us back into Diablo 4, they announced a new class. You talked about it, the Rogue. How'd you like the Rogue?
Rogue looks really cool. Like, yeah, definitely. I mean, like, again, if this were like a few years back, it would have been my go-to class. Like, I love, like, it's obviously, and again, it looks remarkably similar to the Assassin in Lost Ark, right? They've like, it's almost like an amalgamation of the two classes, because in Lost Ark you have like a primary class and then umbrellas down beneath it. So you've got like you've got things like Hawkeye, who's like your bow user, and then you've got the Assassin. But I think it looks really cool. Like, it's definitely. Because what is in Demon in number 3? Demon Hunter. I guess it's kind of the sort of like the merge of those two. But some of the moves are pretty cool. There's definitely, I'm liking like some of the new animations, especially the sort of shadow clone that happens when you fire like the wall of arrows out.
Yeah. That was really cool. And I thought its dismounting ability was also pretty cool. The rain of arrows that it does also has that impactful feel, particularly if you imbue it and stuff, because they got the poison imbues and the fire imbues. And that just actually visually just looks very satisfying to pull off those against a big wave of enemies.
That's the thing, like all those ones where you can kind of group enemies, or like you just like pull them all together and then suddenly you rain things down. Like that's in these kind of games, that is where you get like the most satisfaction. That's why like when I play like Barbarian, you get them grouped together and then you just do like the wailing spin between them.
Yeah. Good old whirlwind barbs. So the other classes that they've announced previously was the Barbarian, Druid, and Sorceress. Which one of those are you more excited for? Rogue, Barbarian, Druid, or Sorceress?
Still Barbarian, just because like again, because it looks like they're doing that thing. They're stepping it up again. Like with a lot of the interactions, there also appears to be like environmental interactions as well. But there seems to be like a lot more weight to their combat. Yeah. And the Barbarian definitely has like I've seen a few of the clips where like he leaps off the mountain, just like slams down and stuff. So I'm 100% like I've embodied. The reason I made this switch in these games is because I used to play the Rogue because I like ninjas and I like Naruto and all that kind of stuff, like assassins. But I would always play a Rogue or a ninja like a tank. I want to be the ninja, but I want to sit in someone's face. So there came a point in my gaming history where I was just like, I should stop playing the classes that are meant for me, and I just switched to tank. Like I'm just now the guy that can just sit there, firm stuff. Like even I'm playing Neo 2 at the moment, I've just spec'd into stamina, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna take a bunch of stuff with a heavy axe, and that's just me. So yeah, Barbarian 100%, and I played Barbarian in Immortal as well. He had some cool moves.
Yeah, I used to be mostly after I went through my Necro stuff. The one that I ended up specializing in ended up being the Barbarian as well later down the line. But this time around, I think I'm actually gonna go Druid, because the Druid, for starters, he's fat, and I think that's cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
he's not overweight, but like he definitely seems a little bit thicker than the other characters. So I'm like, I'm gonna rock the dad bod druid just like straight up.
Nice.
And he's got a sweet looking beard too. So I'm like, I don't know, dude. That druid is speaking to me. What classes do you think they're gonna announce next?
I really hope they announce a necromancer. They have to do it. They have to do a necromancer. Like, I'm sorry, but like in the way the game is looking now, like I want to see the next visuals for skeletons and undead coming out the ground. I want to see like, and given the huge open world and the mount potential, like, I want to see how much more crazy that can get, because that's one thing that I've always wanted to see in Lost Ark. They haven't got a necromancer style class. They've got some summoners, but I'm just like, take a game like this where you've got that, that feel, and obviously they're amping up the visuals and stuff. Yeah, I want to see like a necromancer realizing that. I think that would be my main one. I think it'd be cool to see like a paladin as well. Obviously, like some of the standards. What about you?
It's funny because that is exactly what I was gonna say. God damn it!
Whoopsie! This is going to be our future problem with these discussions. We have the same.
We have the exact same ideas. Like, no, I was also torn between necromancer. I think they're only going to have one more class because I believe. The original D2, you had the Sorceress, Amazon, Barbarian, Necro, and Paladin. So that was 5 classes. And so I think this one's also going to have 5 classes, and then they're eventually going to expand on it with new classes. So I think we're only getting one more class. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, right?
Right.
But if we do get one more class, I would also say it's either going to be a Paladin, because we don't really have the shield-wearing character. Sure, the Barbarian can use one. But then again, in Diablo 3, we didn't have a Paladin at the start. The Crusader got added later in Reaper of Souls. So they could just go with the Necromancer. Or maybe they'll do something different, because like for 3, they had Witch Doctor. But Witch Doctor just never felt right to me, you know?
I played Witch Doctor for a little bit. I quite liked it just because it was basically like a tree version of a necromancer. I'm summoning some frogs. I'm summoning some other little dudes. Like, it was kind of cool. I did quite like Witch Doctor for a bit. Although actually, I completely forgot to mention, but like Monk is also one of my favorite characters. Not just because he's bald, but he was he was the first one that I played in Diablo 3. Because obviously, like, he's basically the kung fu specialist, so he would be really cool. Because I feel like you could see some pretty cool like Diablo 4 visuals with like palm strikes and like ethereal fists and stuff coming out. That would be a cool one.
Is the monk? Yeah, the monk is in Diablo Immortal because I've seen footage of him as well.
Yeah,
I guess you didn't try that one.
No, not this time around. No, I fully main Barbarian.
So like your feeling right now is just you're cautiously optimistic, I would imagine, for D4.
Yeah, I definitely say so. I mean, I know definitely people are like, Blizzard is not in everyone's kind of good books right now, but I mean, just as a Diablo fan, like, I'm just like, look, right, the thing is, all those kind of stuff aside, like, if I'm a fan of a series, I just like the new one, the remasters, like, I'm gonna check them out regardless. I'm excited for the D2 is sort of like my stopgap, because I mean, again, I don't know, I don't think they said it during BlizzCon Online, but like, we don't have a date for Diablo 4 right now, right? It's still quite
No.
Yeah,
they didn't even say a year, which was very disappointing. I'm like, wow, not even a year? You can't even say like 2022 or something like that?
That's the thing. That's what I'm thinking. So I imagine like D2 will be like our stopgap for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm still looking forward to it regardless. Like, everything I've seen from Diablo 4 looks really cool. Like, a lot of the new stuff, I'm quite excited about. Clearly, I need to go and catch up on some other stuff that I didn't read about. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun, definitely.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun ultimately. Always depending on how they're going to implement microtransactions. That's going to be the deal breaker, essentially. If they go too much overboard on one hand, it's not going to work out. And I also hope that they rework the story of it, because I felt like the story of 3 was just terrible. Like,
I can't even remember the story.
That's how bad it was. You can't even remember. Like, Deckard Cain dies in Diablo 3.
Oh yeah, so he does. See, all I remember is I met some old dude outside the church, and he was like, "Go do some quests." I did some quests, and that was it. Actually, you know why? I think that's why I don't remember the quest, because I think I skipped all the story in that game.
Wow. Yeah, I think
I was just like, I want loot.
Yeah, I think that was the good choice, though, to be honest, because like I thought the story in Diablo 3 was really bad. Like, I think 1 was great, 2 was good, and then 3 was just bad. Because, like, particularly because in 2, they gave all of this importance to the soul stones. And in 3, it's just like, oh, the soul stone dropped. Ah, who cares? Don't worry about it. We'll figure that out later. It'll be fine.
Yeah, who cares about that?
Anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. I'm going to put all of Arekkz's links down below, but probably if you're watching this, hopefully you already know about Arekkz.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
Thank you very much for showing up, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.
See you later.